All right, guys, so we have someone very fun today. Probably one of the most relevant guests we've had at Live Your Legend. John Lusk. It's hard to know where to start, but let's see. In 1999, he graduated from business school from Wharton, and instead of taking $1 million signing bonus, he went to pursue his own idea for a product. And actually, he made a mouse, looks like this, but like a golf driver. And he'll explain it, but he did this with his buddy Kyle and went on to actually write a book about their adventure called the MouseDriver Chronicles, which the subheading is the true life adventures of two first-time entrepreneurs. And it's now used in over 200 universities. And since then, I mean, they've been on the cover of Inc. magazine, Business Week, USA Today. He had a show on NPR and was in Fast Company. I mean, it's like every magazine covered these guys. And it's just the ultimate story of the road less traveled. So I'm so excited to have him here. And I mean, now he's on to all kinds of new projects. This most recent one is he's the CEO and founder of Rivet and Sway, which is a fashion eyewear brand that's exclusively for women. And they actually just raised a $2 million round and have been crushing it lately. So it's a very exciting week, I know, for both of us. So John, welcome to the party.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the show, Scott. I really appreciate it. A lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. Well, I've been looking forward to this for a while. I just finished your book, and there's a lot of things I want to cover. So I guess the first thing, could you just tell us a little bit about what happened here? Let's say, okay, you're at Wharton Business School, or just about to start. I know you had a few like specific goals for business school and specific things you didn't want to do. Maybe you could fill us in and then get us going.
Yeah, so I mean, the sole reason I went to business school was because I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'd been working as a consultant at Ernst & Young for 4 years prior. I graduated from SMU and then did the whole consulting thing, and really got the entrepreneurial bug when I was working on a couple projects, and we were working with some software vendors that were startups. So my sole purpose with going to Wharton was to build the confidence and the knowledge and to come up with an idea so I could go start my own company. And I went to Wharton, and the biggest challenge with going to a school like Wharton is once you get in there, you kind of get into this rat race. You're surrounded by a lot of really, really smart people, and when you're at a school like Wharton, every major corporation, everything from investment banks, consulting firms, to big companies are kind of putting you on a pedestal, giving you lots of money and saying, hey, come work for us. And so, the biggest challenge at Wharton was like, how do you, stay the course and really make sure that you're adhering to what your initial goal was. And that was really, really challenging at Wharton.
Yeah, guys, I've heard this a lot because I have a lot of friends who've gone to business school. A lot of people reach out to us saying, hey, I don't know what to do. I want to go to business school. I said, well, if you don't know what to do, be very careful because you can get funneled into these things like you talked about. And I remember writing an article about how business school killed the entrepreneur. And it ended up being super popular. And it was just about the idea that if you're not careful, like you'll just become a banker or a consultant. And I'm curious, like I imagine the pressure was so great to be funneled that way. Like how did you keep from that happening? How did you stay true to it?
Yeah, so just kind of, iterate your point. So when I first went to school and they do not the commencement, but the dean sits in front of all the new 800 students at Wharton and he says, how many people want to be entrepreneurs when they graduate? And I'd say about 70% of the class raised their hand.
Yeah.
He did that exact same thing after graduation, kind of the closing deal.
Yeah.
How many people are starting their own companies? 5 of us raised our hands.
Oh my God.
So there you go. You can kind of imagine that's the challenge right there. But for me, I realized fairly quickly after my first semester at Wharton that I was going to need to take some action and be a bit proactive in terms of not falling into that trap. So I started surrounding myself with other people at Wharton who are very, very dead set on being entrepreneurs. And I teamed up kind of with 5 or 6 other individuals at Wharton where we would have dinners once a week and really make sure we were keeping each other in check. And like if someone was being drawn to like a Goldman Sachs interview, you'd be like, no, don't do it. So we were kind of pulling each other in. I decided instead of going out and getting, a huge summer signing bonus for an internship at one of the banks or consulting firms, I decided that I didn't want to do that. I chose to work during the summer, did my summer internship at the Wharton Small Business Development Center, which is a joint venture between the Wharton School and the SBA, Small Business Administration.
Yeah. And
all we did was provide free consulting services to local businesses in the Philadelphia area. So it was a great opportunity for me to sort of get involved in small business, everything from dance studios to bakeries to technology firms. And as part of my commitment to the SBDC, I was committed to working 20 hours a week during my second year at business school as well. So that kind of kept me out of that rat race, right? So I had something to sort of invigorate my passions of entrepreneurship and small business. And so that was incredibly helpful because I was also surrounded by people who are very entrepreneurial as well at the SBDC.
Right.
And so with that, and in addition to the kind of the 5 people that wanted to sort of be entrepreneurs and were dedicated to being entrepreneurs, I was able to sort of navigate, being put on that pedestal and being recruited by all these major firms. And I was dead set. So by the time I made it to my second semester, my second year of business school, I knew that I kind of made it through the clear, but I still had that problem of what do I do?
Right. God, well, yeah, you keep saying these 5 people, and it's so funny.
Yeah.
I mean, our quote we live by is the Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And I believe that's the biggest life hack in the history of the world in terms of getting results and just making progress. And you were so early on that. And I can only imagine the temptation because, I want everyone who's listening to this to think about what time this was. It was 1999.
Yes.
This was the absolute heyday, right?
Yeah, it was weird too. We had 2 things kind of working against us. One was the fact that we were coming out of Wharton. And when you come out of a school like Wharton, or a top business school, you are put on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And you're kind of told that, hey, no matter what you do, it's going to turn to gold. So you kind of have this, a little bit of an arrogance to you.
Yeah.
The other thing is coming out in 1999, you were sort of led to believe that all you had to do was have a business plan and you were going to be a millionaire. Right? That's kind of what at that point in time, It was like this land grab, and it was, in San Francisco in particular, it was like La La Land. It was, so we those 2 things, you just sort of assumed that you just had to walk out the doors of Wharton and you were going to, be financially successful in the business world.
Right. God, and I know that, from reading the book, like a number of your friends went on to have these big, either became paper multi-millionaires, overnight, or these big $1 million signing bonuses at banks, and you said, okay, screw it, let's go into credit card debt, let's build this business. So what was the jumping off point? Like, what did you build? Like, give us a little detail.
Yeah, so Kyle Harrison was my co-founder with MouseDriver, and it was initially his idea. It was his patent that we kind of utilized. But we were taking an entrepreneurial marketing class at Wharton, and it was the second semester, and we were told, hey, come up with an idea, put together a marketing plan, and present it to the class. And so Kyle was my roommate as well. So we teamed up and we started brainstorming. We couldn't figure anything out. And Kyle said, well, I've got this patent that I created. And he had created this patent when he was at Anderson Consulting way back when. Because he felt like if he had a patent that he could write about in his essays for business school, that might help him get in.
That's awesome.
And the patent was for a computer mouse shaped as the head of a driver golf club. And we said, oh, like a mouse driver. So we said, yeah, let's put together a marketing plan for this. So we did it, and we presented it to Lynn Lodish, who was our entrepreneurial marketing professor. And Lynn is a very well-renowned, very well-respected marketing professor at Wharton, but he's also an incredible investor. He's had some amazing successes. We presented it in his class, and it got some lukewarm reviews. But Lynn was like, hey, this seems like a pretty good idea. And so Kyle and I looked at the plan and we said, okay, let's keep working on this. And so we started using the MouseDriver idea in a number of our other classes where we had to present and put together other things like financial plans or operations plans. Not because we thought it was a great idea, but because we'd already done the work. It was second semester. We didn't want to have to do a ton more work, and so we already had all this work done. But as we started to present this and get more feedback and get classmates and professors and others kind of giving us feedback, we started to realize, wow, people think this is a good idea. And so finally Lynn came to us and said, hey, listen, I'll give you guys $10,000 to go build a prototype if you promise me that you'll go actually bring this to market. And his rationale was that if everybody was going to the right, if everybody was going into banking, consulting, or .com, they were leaving opportunities for us wide open to the left. And he also felt like we'd learn a lot more, not only about ourselves from a personal perspective, but also a lot more about business if we actually brought a product to market.
Right.
So the sun, the stars, the moon must have all been aligned at the time, but we were both like, we're in.
Yeah.
We took Lynn's $10,000 and we moved to San Francisco to start MouseDriver. And the reason we moved to San Francisco is not because that's the best place to bootstrap a consumer product company, probably the first place, because we felt like it was risk mitigation. We felt like if we failed at being entrepreneurs, or if our product just absolutely sucked, we could just walk in at that point in time. We could just walk into any .com and get a job.
Yeah.
It's kind of this risk mitigation strategy. So we moved to San Francisco, set up shop in our apartment in Cow Hollow. We raised about $60,000 from our friends and family to kind of have some working capital, primarily for inventory.
Yeah.
And then we bootstrapped everything else off of credit cards.
God, that's amazing.
And I went into $100,000 in credit card debt 2 different times during the MouseDriver experience.
Wow. And
Yeah.
didn't you say that you found the credit card debt to actually be more useful than trying to get a loan from a bank?
Yeah. So here's the deal: when you start your own company, right, you really don't have anything to hang your hat on. Like, all these banks may claim that they're small business friendly and they'll give out small business loans, but what they really mean is if your business has been around and it's got about $10 million in revenue, we'll give you a loan. So we weren't going to get any sort of bank loan. This wasn't a VC type of deal, although we had people, wanting to put money in, but this wasn't like a VC deal. Like, it just,
Yeah.
it was a consumer product, and we wanted to get in and out pretty quickly. Like, we weren't trying to build a sustainable company. We wanted to sell as much product as possible and then sell the product to like a distributor and then get out and go do something else. We didn't want to be in the novelty tchotchke mouse business all of our career.
Yeah.
So we started doing the research, and we realized, like, at the time, credit cards it was a very competitive market at the time, and you're probably too young for this, but in the mid to late 90s, you could literally just keep moving monies from credit card to credit card. There was no balance transfer fee at that point in time.
Wow, okay.
You just wanted your business. And so what I started to do is I looked at the interest rates and realized that most credit cards were offering interest rates less than 5%. I'm like, well, that's a lot better than what even if we could get a loan, it's a lot better than paying 12 to 15% on a loan. So I had 4 credit cards at the time, and I put but roughly $25,000 on each card. And then, once I had that, I started negotiating with the credit cards. I said, hey, what if, I've got $75,000 on another card. What if I brought that over here? Would you give me 3%? And I started negotiating all this stuff. The best part about this whole thing is I finally got them down. I finally got one card down to like 1.9%. And that's where we put all that stuff. But I ended up transferring all my school debt from Wharton. Once we paid off the MouseDriver credit card debt, I transferred all my school debt to that 1.9% card that I literally pay the minimum amount on every month still, because it's so low.
Why would you pay that? Why would you pay that off?
Exactly. So it's been fantastic.
That's insane. And I mean, your point about negotiating, I know you talked a lot about in the book and how you ended up bartering, doing all kinds of fun things. And I mean, people don't realize how many things you can negotiate, right? I mean, a credit card rate you think is set in stone, but I think you guys pretty much learned like nothing is set in stone, right?
Yeah, you literally you can negotiate everything. I mean, anything. You can literally negotiate anything. Most people, and my wife actually taught me this because she's a phenomenal negotiator. But most people end up just not talking to the right person.
Okay.
But everything, especially in the small business world, everything is negotiable, and we bartered a ton.
Yeah.
Whenever you have a product, bartering is a phenomenal way to go.
I mean, you guys were trading mouse drivers for products and services, right?
We were trading mouse drivers for ad space. We were trading it for some services. We were trading it for entrance into events.
That is amazing.
And it worked, right?
Yeah.
It was a great way to get some initial exposure. And for us, we didn't have a lot of money, and it was kind of fun, right? I mean, it was also like you're living the bootstrapped entrepreneurial experience, right? We've got product, it's got value. Let's utilize that value.
Right. Oh my God, this is amazing. So, okay, first one thing that really stood out in the last few minutes is Len, your entrepreneur marketing professor. I mean, what a mentor! Like, that seems like having someone like that who can really let you know, like, listen, it's all right to charge forward. I imagine helped tremendously, huh?
It did. I mean, Lynn was phenomenal in the early stages for us, just in terms of support. Basically saying, he was our cheerleader.
Yeah.
And it's always good to have your cheerleader because no matter what, I mean, especially if you've never done an entrepreneurial gig, like the whole time you're always like, what the hell am I doing? You kind of need sort of that assurance,
right?
In a lot of cases, and Lynn was great for that. Now, once we actually got the company going, I mean, Lynn was still helpful, but he couldn't provide a ton of feedback in terms of the golf retail space,
right,
or the gift space, which is what we were in. And so, we didn't have a lot of advisors or mentors helping us along for most of the time during the MouseDriver experience. And that was one of our critical mistakes that we made.
But I mean, you do have to give yourself credit for, I mean, the fact that you guys really did focus on relationships a lot in the space and outside of it. I mean, even just in how the MouseDriver Chronicles got developed, right? I mean, you guys were building a community right from the beginning without even really knowing it. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah. So when we were working on MouseDriver, we knew at some point in time this thing was going to get knocked off. All right. We had a design patent on it, but what we had learned while we were in school is that a design patent doesn't really mean anything.
Okay.
You can get around a design patent really easily. So we knew that at some point in time, a Logitech or a Microsoft or somebody else was going to come out with a bigger, better, badder mouse driver, and they were going to probably price it at $5.
Yeah.
Ours was priced at $29.95. You know, we had a very targeted segment we were going after. It was, relatively affluent women who were buying golf gifts for their husbands, spouses, and brothers. So we were trying to understand, how do we compete with that? And the only way we could think about competing was if we were to give customers some sort of emotional tie to our product. Then if they saw our product next to somebody else's product, they would buy our product because they knew our story and they felt like emotional story to it. So we were trying to figure out how do we tie an emotion to our product? That's branding.
Yeah.
And so at the same time, this is around July of 1999, a lot of our classmates were spending their signing bonuses in places like Africa and the Maldives and traveling around the world. And they kept emailing us, and their emails would say something like this: "Are you guys really going to do this MouseDriver thing? Are you guys really going to go do that?" As they're sipping, pina coladas somewhere. Because if you are, I'd love to be kept posted on your progress. Because these are classmates of ours who kind of knew about the project because they'd been involved, in some sort of way. Either we presented to them or what have you. But I think in some sort of fashion, they were also a little bit jealous that we were actually going and taking this idea we had, and we were passionate enough to cross the line, make it happen. So I think there was a little bit of envy for some of my classmates. So I sent out an email in September. And the email went out to about 35, 45, I can't remember, of our friends and family. And the family was primarily our parents and grandparents and uncles. And then the friends were most of our classmates at Wharton. And it was basically an invitation. I basically said, hey, I'm going to start doing the MouseDriver Insider newsletter. I'm going to send it out probably every 3 or 4 weeks. It's going to be a one-page email that basically highlights our emotions, our experiences, our failures, our successes, our insights, our perspectives, our highs and lows. And the reason I'm sending this out to you is a lot of you keep asking us, like, what's going on. And I feel like this is just a great way to keep you updated and posted. Yeah. So that combined with the fact that we were trying to develop this emotional experience, we thought that was a great way as well to start inviting people into the company.
Yeah.
And we felt like if we could invite some of these classmates into the company and get them fired up, the classmates that are working at Goldman Sachs or McKinsey's might go to bat for us and go to the McKinsey procurement officer and say, hey, we should get mouse drivers for gifts for all of our employees. So we also were looking at it as a sales tactic. Yeah. So we started the newsletter, and of course, every single one of these people, you had to send me an email that said I'm in. Okay? So there was no like blog form. Or you had to send me an email that said I'm in. So in that initial invite email, I said, hey, let me know if you're in. Of course, they all came back and said I'm in. So our first newsletter went out to about 45 people. And then it just started taking off. Like we were getting, I'm in requests from random people that we didn't know. Yeah. Which this is pretty cool. Then we started getting requests from professors. Saying, hey, I got a hold of your newsletters. This is awesome. I'd love to utilize this in my class. The very first professor that emailed was a guy named Pankaj Kumar out of Cornell. Yeah. He was teaching a business school level entrepreneurship class. And so it just took off. It really struck a chord with people because, it gave them this sort of insight into a real business, a business that, 99% of American entrepreneurs can relate to. Right. Go out and raise VC money or big money. You can't really relate to using your own money, going to credit card debt, doing something out of your apartment, right? It's just, and most people could relate to that.
Yeah, and you said that took off. I know it grew to a pretty good size. I don't know if you're comfortable disclosing like what level that got to, but you had a lot of people on that list, right?
Yeah. I think we ended around 10,000 subscribers on that list.
That's unbelievable. And keep in mind, this is before there were like blog subscribers or any of that. This was like just like an email list, which is pretty crazy.
What's hilarious about this is how I manage this email list? It sucks. Through Microsoft Outlook.
Oh God, that sounds awful.
And so I would literally take every email address in person and I would store it in Microsoft Outlook. You remember, social media hadn't really hit at this point in time. In fact, LinkedIn had just started, and they had emailed me because I was using LinkedIn, and I was like one of the biggest LinkedIn, members out there with my work. Because I was putting all these people into LinkedIn as well.
Oh, got it.
But I was managing this in Microsoft Outlook, and when I sent out emails, we weren't big enough at that time that there weren't these off-the-shelf MailChimp type email programs. Right. So we were literally emailing through Microsoft Outlook, but I had to email like 50 at a time. So whenever I did a newsletter, because the email ISPs wouldn't let more than 50.
Yeah. That's insane. Got it. It's such. I mean, the fact that we take all that for granted now. You know, Live Your Legend sends out an email. It's like, I don't even think about it. But you did all that by hand. And what's so cool is that you built that community and it started to kind of snowball. And I know that helped with getting deals at different companies for sales and getting ideas. You had all these like informal advisors at your fingertips. They're very smart people, you know, from business schools and things, which is very clever.
Yeah, it was actually that. I mean, it really served two purposes for us. One, it generated a lot of awareness, which did ultimately turn into sales. But more importantly for Kyle and I, is we didn't do a great job of really bringing in the right types of advisors into this company early on. Yeah. That newsletter subscriber base, because we had students, VCs, investors, bankers, entrepreneurs, actors, journalists, we had this incredibly diverse range of people. We would pose our issues and our questions in those newsletters, and we would get 20, 30, 40, 50 responses back saying, have you tried doing this? Or here's what I did. Here's what I learned.
Yeah.
That newsletter subscriber base became our advisory board.
Yeah. God,
and it wasn't hard for us to share issues we were having because we've been doing that for the last 2 years.
Right. God, it's huge. And what's cool is that everyone watching now, like today, like there's so many much easier tools to do this. And I mean, that's like one of the most powerful things of a blog. Like people want to be a part of a story, and you can teach people along with you as you learn. I mean, there's a lot of different techniques there, and we're even gonna. I mean, you've given me some great advice to this, but at Live Your Legend, we're gonna launch a physical product, or at least try to, and document the whole process. And I haven't announced exactly what it'll be or the specifics, but we're definitely going to use a lot of these ideas that you guys have put together to kind of keep people along for the ride. And I think it's going to be an awesome experience. I have no idea how we're going to do it, but luckily I know people like you to kind of give me some pointers.
I think it's brilliant. I mean, in a sense, I mean, the newsletter subscriber base, we essentially crowdsourced solutions to our problems.
Yeah.
From a very targeted base of people who are, really bought into our story, who enjoyed, they enjoyed riding with us on the entrepreneurial experience. I think it's brilliant. I think to the extent that you can involve, customers, even potential customers, even other people who aren't customers, into the story of a company. Naturally, I think a lot of people like to build things. They like to see things grow. They like to feel like they're a part of something. Yeah. And really, it's almost like creating a movement. And creating a community around that movement, and people like doing that. Right. They like to be. It's a part of being a part of something. And it kind of fulfills a need. I'm not really sure where it falls on the hierarchy of need. What's that, Maslow's hierarchy? Yeah. I'm not really sure where that falls. I'm sure it's in one of those levels.
It's pretty high up there, I think. With having community and having just connection. Awesome. Okay, so let's get into a couple specifics here. Like one thing that comes to mind that I know people think about is risk. Like you didn't go with any of these huge offers, and you just started something on your own. Like, what risk did you see? Did you see that as a big risk or not? Like, how did you look at that?
I did see it as a risk, but it was a pretty calculated risk. So there's a difference between like just running off a cliff and jumping on it, and then going to the edge of the cliff, measuring the distance, trying to figure out like how you're going to get down. Do you have the right equipment? Testing the equipment. Yeah. And so going through business school, you're kind of trained to take calculated risks, right? Yeah. Now the problem with business school is I think that ultimately, if you look at all the calculations and the risk, 9 times out of 10, you're going to say it's too risky and I'm going to walk away. I think that's one of the problems with business school type folks is that like they're so calculated that everything becomes too risky and they walk. Yeah. But it was definitely a risk. But the way I looked at it was really twofold at that point in time. One, I felt like I was confident enough in my abilities and my skill sets, coming out of Wharton, that if this did not work out, I could find a job elsewhere. Yeah. I could always go back into consulting. I could always go find some other job. That was one. Two, I felt like I was going to learn a lot. I knew I was going to learn a ton. I was in the mindset, and I think this is important for all entrepreneurs, that you need to kind of have that trait where you're always wanting to learn. Yeah. That you realize you're not always right, that other people are going to have better ideas than you, and that you're able to kind of absorb information and you're willing to learn. And so I knew that I was going to learn. And so if this thing bombed out, the risk of, not doing well financially for a year or two or whatever would be, made up by the fact that I was just learning a ton, which I thought would also help me. Right. But also, the risk was also taken away by the fact that we were so passionate about this. Mm. When you get to that point where, and I try to tell people, it's almost like, when you're, getting married or you're getting engaged, everybody says, have you found the right one? You kind of just know. It's the same thing with entrepreneurship. Like, you're not going to cross that line to take that risk unless you feel it, right? Unless you feel it. And so we felt it. And so when you cross that line, we never thought about, oh my gosh, if we go $200,000 in credit card debt, we won't be able to pay it off.
Right.
We never thought about failing. It was always about, okay, well, when we sell $10 million worth of product, what's the next new company we're going to start?
Yeah, I love it.
It's also that was also flawed as well. But your passion also mitigates some of that fear of risk.
Yeah.
But you knew it was a risk, but we just felt like it was a risk worth taking.
And I mean, when you have that passion and conviction, you get a lot more resourceful. I feel like there's just a lot more possibility that you think of. And I mean, your obsession with just learning by doing is it's something that I share for sure. And I don't know about you, but I feel like that's the only way to actually learn anything. That's why I've had trouble in school and things, and that it's so theory driven. And I love that you guys had an idea that throughout Wharton, you probably got the absolute most out of that education because you applied everything you learned to a real product that you were considering.
We did. We applied everything we learned. And that was one of the things I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to take all this stuff that I just learned at Wharton, and I wanted to apply it somewhere. I mean, I spent 2 weeks after graduating from Wharton at home in Austin putting together all my cases, and putting together these 2 huge binders and marketing tabs based on fundraising, marketing, product planning, because I want to be able to access that stuff and use it with MouseDriver.
Right.
And we did. We got to use it, and I'm using it now at Rivet and Sway. And one of the things that we really press here with our employees at Rivet and Sway is we're a learning organization.
Yeah.
We want people to feel like they're constantly learning, not just about their specific function, but about other functions as well.
Right.
Because I feel like, again, you learn a lot more, you get more inspired when you know all these things. So part of our recruiting process is really trying to understand who are the people that have a propensity to really want to learn.
God, I love that. Yeah, you just think of how exponential their output can be, and just the fun when you focus on that.
Yeah.
So in terms of risk, I mean, it's really, you realize your worst case scenario really wasn't so bad, and you had a lot of interesting things that could happen, which I think that's a fantastic way to kind of fuel energy. And then so you moved out to San Francisco. It's the gold rush, 2000. Like, what is one thing you wish you would have known when you moved that you didn't know, but you obviously know now? Like, what hit you in the face? Something that was just like, oh my God.
Well, one, just how hard it is to bring a product to market. I think when we were coming out of Wharton, we just sort of assumed that this thing would land in our hands, and then we would just sell millions and millions of dollars of product. And so I think making that transition from making our product to actually selling it was really hard for us.
Yeah.
'Cause it was just something that we thought would just naturally kind of happen. So that was one thing that kind of hit us in the face pretty quickly. The other thing that hit us in the face pretty quickly was we felt like not just second-class citizens in San Francisco, but like third-class citizens in San Francisco, because everybody was in this gold rush. Everybody was doing something technology-related. We were manufacturing, a novelty tchotchke mouse and selling it out of our apartment in Cow Hollow. Okay? So trying to explain that to people in 1999 about what we did as our entrepreneurial venture, we literally got laughed at.
Yeah. Oh, God.
When we told people that we sold computer mice shaped as the head of a driver golf clubs, like, they didn't get it. They didn't understand. They would immediately jump into, so is it a technology play? What's your business model? I'm like, sell as many mouse drivers as possible. It was crazy, and it really. I remember specifically one day, Kyle and I were driving back from the Valley. We had a meeting, I think, in Palo Alto with a golf gift shop or something like that. And we were driving down 101, and we got to there's a billboard. It's past SFO, past the airport, just past South San Francisco, and there's this billboard that's a pretty expensive billboard. I mean, Apple advertises there all the time. And Kyle, one of the companies that he helped start in business school was PayMyBills.com, and he started it with Jeff Grass and John Tedesco. And ultimately, Pay My Bills raised like $20 million from E-Trade and Idea Lab, and they were one of those .coms. But this is probably the third month, around September, October. And we're driving back, and on that billboard, we see this massive ad for PayMyBills.com.
Oh, God.
And Kyle's driving, and I look over to Kyle, and I can see him, he's just biting his lip. And I can just tell in his eyes, he's just thinking, what have I done, man? But we had to deal with that for, until the .com crash. We had to deal with that daily, man. And it just stood us, just stared us in the face every day. Every day we would see our friends' companies that were public, right, just going up and up and up. And we're just like, what have we done, right? I mean, it was, and that was really hard.
Right. Oh my God.
It was really hard. And that, the first year and a half, it was actually the first year because the crash started happening in April of 2000. So it was really up until, May of 2000 where we kind of felt it. But then when the crash hit, man, the crash just didn't hit the floor. It went like through the floor.
Yeah.
Then we kind of felt, vindicted a little bit, right? We were just like,
right. I mean, yeah, be honest. Did you feel kind of nice when you saw the market going down in some weird way?
Yes. we did, because we were still selling product. We weren't tied to the whole internet thing. We were tied to a very traditional, make a product, find distribution channels, and sell it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that was still going on, and we were selling a product that was at a price point where people could still afford to buy it.
Right. Oh my God! But the intensity of that just sounds so nuts. The conviction to stick with that, I can't imagine it.
Yeah, I think there's a chapter in the book called Schadenfreude where we talk about we knew what we were doing this whole time.
Right, all figured out.
It was. I mean, it sucked as an economy, but for us, it just, here we did it the right way. We bootstrapped this thing. We didn't go spend lavishly. We didn't go buy. We didn't have a massive launch party.
Yeah.
We were doing this the right way, and I think that's sort of what the media was attracted to. I think that's what was motivating and inspiring, most of our insider newsletter readers, was because we did this the way that most Americans start businesses.
Right.
Most people don't go out and raise money. They start it in their garage or their kitchen or their office in their apartment or their house, and then they slowly grow it, and they have to be careful because they don't have unlimited access to funds, and that's the route we took.
Right. Oh wow, and I think it's probably why your book is now in over 200 universities. I mean, it's a story that people can understand, and we appreciate it, And
yeah. And what's interesting too is it's now published in 6 languages or 6 countries.
That's wild.
That tells me that a lot of these countries, it's really popular in Korea and China. So you can kind of get a sense that these countries are becoming more entrepreneurial, and it's kind of exciting.
Well. And that is incredible. I mean, it's wild. And do you have a picture of the book? Do you have the book with you?
Oh, yeah.
I left mine at the office, but yeah nice. Yeah. Okay, there's the MouseDriver on the front.
MouseDriver Chronicles. That's the MouseDriver. Awesome product. If you can find it, let me know. Because get some more myself.
So you mentioned China. That brings me to one question that I know there's a lot of talk these days about. Oh, you can outsource things to China to get manufactured, and you can get them shipped for cheap and built for cheap. Is that a myth, or is that real? You guys had some issues in China, right? What? Can you just give us a little color to that?
So I guess the answer to your question is yes, you can get things cheaper, and yes, it is a myth that it's super easy or whatever. But here's the deal: China is the best place to go manufacture product for the most part because the labor costs are so low, and even with shipping, it's still much lower. Now, over the next 10 years, I think you're going to see manufacturing prices rise tremendously in China.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, I think it's going to rise so much that it then becomes better to just manufacture if you can here in the U.S. But for us, it was almost 10 times cheaper to go manufacture our mouse in China than it was in the U.S.
God.
10 times.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Now, the issues we had is the communication barrier. You also have back then, this was almost 15 years ago. It's changed quite a bit now, but there's still a pretty big difference. The Chinese hadn't quite yet adopted the Western way of doing business.
Yeah.
And so it was hard to deal with that. It was a learning process. The Chinese, my experience with the Chinese is that they'll always tell you yes. Can you get it to us in 3 weeks? Yes. Didn't you mean to say 3 months? Yes. Realistically going to be here in 6 months? Yes. Well, which one is it? Yes. We kind of learned that you have to really dig to find out realistically when things are going to be shipped because it takes time. And you have to. It's a pure inventory management issue, and you'll probably run into this as well if you're manufacturing overseas. Is that you have to be able to project what you expect to sell, 3 to 6 months out.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's challenging. And we had, of course, our initial shipping challenges as well. I mean, our very first order of mouse drivers, our very first container, sunk in Typhoon York, right? It fell off the boat and sunk to the bottom of the Pacific. We were like, what do we do now? So we decided we're flying product over. We weren't going to do a shipping. It's coming via FedEx on a plane. It's going to get here.
Oh my God! Natural disaster and all. You got the whole experience.
Yeah, but we learned a ton. But we fortunately had phenomenal partners over there that were very helpful to us.
Yeah.
That held our hand. But you always have issues with any sort of overseas manufacturer. We have the same issues with rivet and sway, right? I mean, we want to have product here within 3 months of ordering, but no one seems to be able to do that, right?
Wow.
And so, and a lot of it's just relationship building as well.
So it sounds like, I mean, lessons takes longer than you'd think, just like about everything that one would imagine building something. And don't make assumptions. So, I mean, I know you guys had like agreements like, okay, this is the color, you got it, and it was the right color. Then like the next shipment was like the wrong color or something, right? Like,
yeah, that's the deal. So you have to. It takes a while to go back and forth. And one of the biggest things we learned, and Guy Kawasaki used to really hammer this back in the mid '90s when he first came out with Selling the Dream. But we were trying to get MouseDriver absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
At some point in time, you got to say, you know what, this is good enough, and it's better than what already exists out there. Let's get it out to our customers and let our customers tell us what needs to happen next.
Right.
We were getting into this, we were going back and forth with China for like 3 months. Well, we need to make the weight of the MouseDriver a half a gram heavier. All right, let's wait another 2 weeks for the prototype. Well, the color is just not quite right. We want this other gray. And finally, Kyle and I were just like, we got to launch this sucker.
Right. Yeah.
We got to get it out there and let our customers tell us, how we're going to improve it.
It reminds me of this concept now is very prominent, the idea of a minimal viable product, right? I imagine that's kind of what you're getting at.
That's exactly right.
And it's interesting that, I mean, I feel like this will happen with anything. With me at Live Your Legend, I mean, any business, you pretty much do anything you can to avoid the hardest part, which is usually selling. And it's the most important part, right? And so you could tweak a product forever and never show it to anyone. But it reminds me of those 2 points. You said business all comes down to 2 things, right? In the book. What were the 2?
They're making and selling.
That's it.
I mean, you're either making a product or developing a service, or you're selling it. I mean, that's it. And at some point in time, especially when you're in a small company or startup, you got to go from making that product. Not that you're not constantly trying to figure out how to improve it, but at some point in time, you got to go from making it to selling it.
Yeah.
It's not until it starts to get in the hands of your customers where you're going to get enough feedback and knowledge and learning about how you're going to make the improvements and what you're going to do.
Right.
But I mean, for me, it's all about making and selling. And when you're a founder of a company, making those transitions is hard because you're so focused on making, and then all of a sudden everything kind of shifts to selling. But you can't ignore continuing to make improvements to your product.
Right. Right. And what's interesting now too with today's technology, we plan to implement a lot of this or try to implement a lot of this. But what we work on is you can sell things before you design and build them in certain ways. You can. Like Kickstarter today, like you can pretty much do a pre-sale for a product, raise maybe 10, 20, 30, sometimes $1 million, and then you can go into manufacturing and you're transparent. You don't lie to people. You don't say it's built when it's not, but you can build a better product sometimes if you bring them along with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, I think to the extent that you can involve customers, potential customers, evangelists into your company early,
yeah,
it's awesome. Because you're developing these relationships, you want people involved. You want to get that feedback, but 2, you want people out there talking about your company. Right. Evangelists will naturally sell the product for you. And word of mouth is by far the best way of acquiring customers and getting new customers. I mean, you're never going to be able to beat word of mouth.
Yeah.
It's the most powerful way of getting people. And if you can get people talking about your product or your service, you're in a great spot.
Right. God, it's huge. I mean, I just think a lot of people miss that. They think they need to spend all their time building something before they even know if someone wants it. So there's just a lot of pre-selling that can happen, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing that just screamed off the page in your book and just talking with you is just the word fun. Just like the things you guys it seemed like it was a party for you guys. Even though I know it was very hard and very scary, that seems to be like the core of your demeanor. It's like enjoy the process. And you guys have had, I mean, there's a lot of stories that come to mind, but I thought maybe you could share one specifically. I remember you talked about one budding entrepreneur that stopped by your office one day, and he asked for some help about how to manufacture and what that led to.
Yeah. So, one of the things that what I always tell everybody, like when I'm going and speaking to schools and talking to other entrepreneurs, is like when you go into, entrepreneurship and starting your own business, don't look at it in terms of, wow, I can make a lot of money. Don't look at it in terms of, am I going to succeed or fail financially? look at it in terms of success is going to be measured in really one way, and that's this: do you feel like you learned a lot at this? Whether it folded or not, do you feel like you learned a ton?
Yeah.
And did you enjoy the ride?
Right.
Meaning, if you're not having a good time, and you take that with a grain of salt. It's not like you're going to come into work every day super bubbly and everything's going to be great. But if you're not thoroughly just enjoying the experience, and that means enjoying the highs and lows, then it's going to be tough. And so you've really got to go with the fact that, hey, success here is if I learn a ton, because what you learn in your first venture, whether it's financially successful or not, and success is measured in a lot of different ways,
right.
You're going to get those learnings either into your next venture or into your company or into your personal life, because you will learn that much. So I had one of these early entrepreneurs coming into my office in Cow Hollow. This must have been, I think, 2001.
Your office was also your bedroom or your apartment, right?
Yeah. And we had actually had office space at one point in time. Then we got kicked out. And we had to go back to the apartment. But for the most part, we did everything out of our 2-bedroom apartment in Cow Hollow. This entrepreneur who had reached out to us, and I think he'd either read the Inc. magazine article or I believe he had the book as required reading at Princeton.
Okay.
And he had started this company out of Princeton, and I'd been corresponding with him via email, and he was like, hey, I'd love to talk to you. I consider you guys kind of my mentors because I've read your book, whatever. And so this guy came into our offices, and over the course of the next 2 years, I would meet with him occasionally. And he had started this company called Brain Quicken, and he was manufacturing in China, and he was trying to sell his product. Very similar gig as MouseDriver in the sense that we had a lot of things were outsourced. We didn't have a lot of money to pay people. And this guy's name was Tim Ferriss. And this was in 2001. And so Tim and I like to say that I inspired Tim to do everything he's done, which I know is far from the truth. But Tim would come and visit. And then when Tim got involved with the Silicon Valley Association for Software Entrepreneurs, he would invite me to sit on panels. He's an absolute genius at bringing people together and structuring stuff. So I sat on a number of different panels with them. And then he would also hit me up. Occasionally he would hit me up, on insights on how I got, how I published a book. What did I do to write the book and that sort of stuff. And I would tell him, he's like, yeah, someday I'm going to write a book. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. And he would tell me all this stories. And I loved this kid because he had these crazy whacked out stories. He told me the story about how he won the Chinese National Kickboxing Championship because he just followed the rules. And he told me about all this stuff. And then in 2006, when I was at Microsoft, he contacted me and said, hey, I've written a book. Do you mind, reading it and, kind of editing it for me? And so I read it and came back to him and said, yeah, it's pretty good. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to try to self-publish it or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And he's like, if I do it, can you give me some advanced praise? I'm like, yeah, sure. I gave him some advancst praise. I'm like, good for Tim. He's written a book. Great. Yeah. He calls me up like a few months later. He's like, it's published and it's coming out next week. I'm like, oh, good for Tim. And it comes out, and then 3 months later, it's like on the New York Times bestseller list. It's a 4-hour work week. I'm like, crap. Maybe I should have been going to him for advice. So that's my Tim Ferriss story. Tim's awesome. I think he's one of the most brilliant promotion marketers out there. He's done a lot of it. I find myself going to his blog every now and then learning from Tim. So, right. But Tim was one of many, entrepreneurs that would stop by the office or reach out to us. We would have people on a weekly basis who had read the article in Inc. Or insider newsletter subscribers just stop by randomly because they wanted to meet us to tell us that we had motivated and inspired them to go start their own business.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We had people sending us their products. Yeah. I still do. I still get people who read the book and they email me their product and say, do you mind just taking 5 minutes and just tell me what you think initially?
Right.
But we really struck a chord with a lot of people.
God, you think of the ripple effect that book is, still having as people read it and are inspired to build things. It's pretty cool to think that such a foundational piece that gets out to so many folks. So
it's amazing. And there are a number of professors that are out there where their entire syllabus is based on chapters of the book.
Wow.
And there are certain professors out there which John Greathouse at UCSB who's been using the book for 6 or 7 years, and it's still to this day the most popular book for the classroom instruction. And I went down there in November and spoke to a few hundred students and professors about my experience, and it's just awesome to see that it has that much staying power. But we wrote it in such a way that we felt like it would have lasting staying power.
Yeah.
You're not really going to substitute this experience. We really focus on the emotional experience of starting a company versus the how-to.
Yeah.
And no matter how you're starting a company, what company you're starting, the emotions that are shared amongst most entrepreneurs are pretty much the same. You know, it's those highs and lows, you know, the challenges, they're all the same. It's just different industries, different products and services.
Man, I feel like we can go on forever about this, but I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time. This is such a party. This is so fun. Couple things. I mean, one, are you comfortable telling us a little bit how the story wrapped up? I know the book kind of gives it on a cliffhanger. Don't give everything away, but
yeah. So it's funny because the book does end. I think the book ends in December of 2000, and we actually officially closed down shop, I want to say in April of 2002. So we still had another year and a half roughly that MouseDriver kept going. So after the Inc. article, I mean, our sales blew up. You know, we signed the Brookstone deal. We got into the main department stores. We ended up doing a lower end MouseDriver, and this was part of our branding strategy. We had a $29.95 product that we sold in Brookstone and pretty high end golf gift shops, and then we planned to go low end with like a $15.95 product that would be in clamshell packaging or something like that. And we did a deal with Walmart, and we bundled the MouseDriver with a golf CD game and a golf mouse pad, and we sold it in Walmart for like actually it was $19.95.
Okay.
So we penetrated some more mass channels, and our sales went up. But you know, I found myself, after the Inc. article, from a media perspective, things kind of blew up. You know? So I found myself, doing the media tour when the book came out in 2001. 2002. I found myself on the professional speaking circuit, actually getting paid to go talk about my experiences. So in theory, when we were getting all this media attention, that was the best time to sell our product because people are wanting to know what the product looks like.
Yeah.
We still didn't have a lot of retail channels or distribution channels we were selling through. Online really wasn't that big at the time. So when I should have been selling, going back to you making the selling point, when I should have been selling, I was out there, kind of eating up the media attention.
Yeah, well, you earned a little bit of that. You got to have some fun, right?
Yeah, and it was great, and I loved it. But I learned a big lesson too, which is, getting media attention is great, and it certainly fuels the ego, and it's cool to have people talking about you in a positive light. But at the end of the day, there's got to be an objective for that. And the objective of our media should have been selling more MouseDrivers. So when I was out doing all this talking, sales started to slump because I was kind of the salesperson.
Yeah.
And we got to this point where, for us to actually increase our sales, we were going to have to either introduce another version of MouseDriver or introduce sort of product extensions. And neither Kyle or I again, our whole goal was to get in and out within a 4-year time frame. We did not want to build a company around, MouseDriver.
Yeah.
So when it got to that decision point of either investing in another generation of MouseDrivers, we looked at the timing and we're like, you know what? This wasn't part of our strategy. This wasn't part of our objective. This wasn't part of our goal. Our goal was to get in and get out, and we said we need to start, getting out.
Right.
And so I won't say what happened. Not real sure. Actually, people will they can read it on the MouseDriverChronicles.com, which is an incredibly antiquated website, but our newsletters are out there. But we held true to our initial objectives, and we got in with I think we got out within 4 years.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, we'll certainly link to all that stuff to make sure people get to check out the whole story. But speaking of just as we wrap up, like continuing the story, you talked about media and PR. I know that right now at Rivet and Sway, like at your new company, things have been going well. Like, can you tell us what you're building? What's the reason? What's going on?
Yeah. So Rivet and Sway is essentially a boutique eyeglass designer. And we only sell to women, so we're exclusively made for women. So everything from our product designs of our actual frames to our colors, to the website, to our packaging, everything is exclusively focused on a certain segment of women. And what we're really trying to do is we're trying to take the standard prescription eyewear shopping experience and turning it into a true boutique shopping experience. And really, the reason this opportunity came up is we knew that there was opportunity in the eyewear industry. There's lots of companies that are out there that are kind of proving that, especially in the e-commerce space.
Yeah. We
realized when we looked at that opportunity that there were a lot of competitors coming into that space. A lot of these competitors were, what I call Warby Parker wannabes. And Warby Parker is kind of the leader in the online space, and they've done a tremendously good job of sort of disrupting the space. And we saw all these competitors coming online, selling to both men and women, targeting hipsters, selling at a $95 price point. So when you see that, you have to say, okay, if we're going to enter that space, how do we differentiate ourselves? And you can either say we're going to differentiate ourselves on technology, on price, on service. And we looked at that and said, well, you know what? It's already a crowded space. Are there other segments that we can potentially go after? So we started looking at women. And what we found out was that women, when you're talking about the prescription eyewear shopping experience, they absolutely hate it. They think it sucks. As a shopping experience, it rates like a 1.5 on a scale of 10.
Wow.
And if you compare it to shopping for a handbag or a purse or shoes, shopping for prescription eyewear for women doesn't even rate as a shopping experience.
Yeah.
So we said, wow, there's a huge problem here because women need eyewear.
Yeah.
And they need prescription eyewear. They hate the experience. So what can we do to improve on the experience? So we really focused in on why do they hate the experience and really developed a product and a service around addressing those needs. So Rivet and Sway sells only to women. We sell a very high-quality product, high-quality lens. We automatically upgrade people to high-index lenses, which basically means that you get a really thin, lightweight lens if you have a strong prescription. We have a home try-on model where you can order up to 3 frames. We'll FedEx them to you for free. You can try them on at home, send them back to us. We have a free personal stylist who's Ritzy, and she's an actually real person. She'll do video Skypes, FaceTimes. She'll look at your personal style, your face shape, your color. She'll even look at a certain outfit you might want to wear and recommend frames for you.
Wow.
So we're only targeting women. All-inclusive price point of $199, which includes everything, all the high-index lenses, the home try-on. We do 2-day FedEx shipping, which really plays on the convenience that women want. Yeah. And when they frames, they don't want to wait. They want them now. So we do 2-day FedEx shipping. So it's been phenomenal, and I've applied not only all the lessons I've learned from MouseDriver, but also the lessons I've learned in other startups and other companies over the last 15 years to Rivet and Sway. And one of the big things I'm very excited about is really, one of the most important things I've learned in all of my startup experience, and I've not only started up a company, but I've been involved in like 3 different other startups, is how important culture is to the company. And we go back to the culture of learning here at Rivet and Sway. Yeah. How you define your culture within a company really defines how you hire people as well. You're not just looking for skill sets, but you're also looking at, do they really exemplify the culture? And my experience with big companies is big companies always talk about the culture, but absolutely no way does it really translate into hiring.
Yeah, that's wild.
Most managers just want to fill the open position because they have that need. In a smaller company, it's imperative because the teams are so small that you have people that sort of live the culture, and they can, and you can sort of breathe that culture. And so that's one of the big lessons that I'm applying to Rivet and Sway. We truly are building a company that internally represents the brand that we want to represent externally to our customers.
God, I feel like the intangibles that you get there and the value from that, from starting from the beginning of hiring people like that is huge. You want to just hire people who believe what you believe, right? And who have the same mentality. And I love how you're focusing on such a specific pain, and that's where you guys started with like this business. And I think that's something that I think people can miss a lot of times. I think, oh, this is a cool idea. It's like, well, wait, how's it helping people? Like, how do people really need this? What's the point? Do you really need to convince them, or do they already have a problem? And so you just opened that up just now, and I love how you covered that.
Yeah, we went really deep into customer needs and pain points and problems. Yeah. And, unlike most e-commerce companies, where a lot of e-commerce companies are based on a new technology. And how do I find a market for this new technology? And that's kind of how the technology industry works. For Rivet and Sway, we really looked at the problems that women had with the prescription eyewear shopping experience. And we tried to address all these problems with a Rivet and Sway offering, part of which includes an e-commerce site, but a lot of it also will involve a direct sales model as well that we're looking into. But our very first sort of practice, or the very first thing we did at Rivet and Sway, was develop sort of our brand platform. How do we want to represent ourselves, which is really very customer focused. Right. And we kind of built in from that in terms of building out the technology and how we were going to deliver those solutions based on technology as well.
Man, well, congrats! It's so fun to hear. It's like MouseDriver to women's eyewear. I mean, just so people listening, like, you don't have to be stuck in any one thing, right? You can do the theme is have fun, learn things, and act accordingly. Like, whatever works,
I get that question all the time. It's like, you don't wear women's eyewear, and it's not like I'm, super passionate about, women's fashion. I am passionate about solving needs. Yeah. I'm passionate about developing emotional connections with customers, and I'm also passionate about disrupting industries. And so for me, it's incredibly exciting because the feedback we get from our customers is like over the top good. We got a net promoter score right now of like 78.
That's unreal.
That's all limit. You know, I think it's actually higher, but you know, we're just, you know, we have customers telling us we've changed their lives and they never knew they needed a high index lens, and it's awesome. You know, and that's the sort of feedback that drives you as an entrepreneur, because you realize the impact that your product or your service or whatever you're doing has on people. And it's the same sort of, you know, feeling you must be getting with Live Your Legend, because I go through some of the testimonials and the stories that you have on your site, and like you get kind of goosebumps.
Oh yeah, dude, they'll bring you to tears sometimes. It's wild.
But that's what also keeps you going, because you realize, you know how motivating and inspiring you can be on others, and that I get charged with that. I love it. At some point, I'm going to be a professor at some point in time. I've taught classes, but I love teaching. I love motivating, and I love inspiring. So I see that with Live Your Legend as well. So congrats on that.
You've officially done that in a big way today. And by the way, you're already a professor in a huge. You're in 200 plus universities. Come on, give yourself some credit. But
you need to make it official at some point in time.
Right. Well, John, this is so fun, man. Thank you so much for taking so much time. I mean, this is so perfect for what we're looking to build, and just kind of doing things that really matter and leading with that. So any last things you want to make sure people know before we jump off? Well, of course, link to all your stuff, but
yeah, I mean, I think, you know, one, in addition to reading the MouseDriver Chronicles on Amazon, I think I'm just going to go back to, you know, really, you know, enjoying the ride. If you're on the fence of becoming an entrepreneur and you're trying to figure out, do I quit my day job or what have you, and you're scared, which is natural, and, you know, you're taking risks, you know, don't look at it in terms of, wow, I might lose some money here. And of course, you have to take into consideration where you are with your family, and that's a big, you know, it's a big question you have to ask yourself.
Right.
But take it more from a, what do I think I'm going to learn, and not just from a business perspective, but also from a personal perspective.
Right.
And what you learn about yourself at any age from a personal perspective is always good, not only in the game of business, but in the game of life. And so I would look at your experience with, you know, entrepreneurship being, you know, what do I think I'm going to learn here? You know, and it's that's what jazzes me up, and that's what I also, when I'm recruiting for Rivet and Sway, you know, I want people to really try to understand, have they thought about what they're going to learn? Are they just coming here because they think they're going to maybe make a lot of money, or they're coming here because, you know, we're in the fashion industry, sort of? Or they're coming here because they really think they're going to learn something and it's going to help them, and that's really what I'm going after. So I would encourage, you know, people who are listening to this or watching this to really think about in terms of, you know, what you're going to learn, and don't look at it in terms of, am I going to be financially successful? Look at it in terms of, do I think I'm going to come out of this having learned something about myself and about business?
And if success is defined by really learning and doing, then failure is almost impossible, right? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. I don't think, unless you have your head in the sand, I don't think that unless you go in for 3 months and come out, right? If you actually dedicate yourself for at least a year to trying to start a company or start a business and bring a product or a service to market, you can't fail, because you will learn something.
Yeah.
And that's how I try to really position things with budding entrepreneurs. You know, one thing I didn't mention is the Fab Five.
Oh yeah.
I think I mentioned. So it was actually there's probably 7 of us. So there's Kyle and I. Mm-hmm. And Kyle's been at Google 8 years, and I think he's going to be there for the rest of his life, because he's got like quadruple golden handcuffs. You know.
Yeah.
So there were the 2 of us. Then there was John Tedesco and Jeff Grass, who did Pay My Bills.
Yeah.
John Tedesco is now an investor, and Jeff Grass has a BuySafe, which is a company that's in DC, small startup.
Yeah.
Brett Hurt, who started Core Metrics, which was sold to IBM, he also started Bizarre Voice, which went public 6 months ago. He's now managing Austin Ventures. There's Greg Spiridellis, who started Jib Jab.
Wow.
And then there's Andrew Trader, who was the co-founder of Zynga. that was our group, and we're the ones that kind of, you know, kept each other going.
Yeah.
You know, I think we've all had our success one way or the other in terms of, you know, being a part of companies that have done something, whether financially done something, or you know, had a book come out of it, or turned out to be, you know, something that led into an investment career or whatever. But you know, that group has done quite well.
That is the perfect way to wrap things up, John. This is, man, thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to be interacting plenty in the future on lots of things.
Well, Scott, thanks for having me on the show, and I really appreciate it, man.
Of course, man. Thanks a lot.
Take care.